Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the first webinar of the 2022 season. My name is Frankie Billingsley. I'll be one of your hosts this evening. I will be joined by
Scott McLaren. I am the co-host. I don't know why you're letting me do this, but you are. So that's outstanding. I'm very excited to be here and really excited that we have the guests that we do. It's, I think, somebody that has been on Frankie's wish list since we started webinars way back when. Doesn't really need an introduction, but Frankie, why don't we go ahead and give him a little bit of an introduction anyway.
Thank you so much, Scott. Yes, I'm very excited that our National Director of Umpires is joining us this evening as our guest to present and to have a conversation with us. Jeff started umpiring in 1986. After officiating at 4 Canadian Championships, he received his Level 5 and ISF certification in 1997. He then went on to officiate at 2 ISF World Championships in 1999 and 2002, and the ISC World Tournament in 2005. While he enjoyed the on-field action as an official, his real passion is teaching and learning. He has instructed at many certification clinics and mechanic schools and has been a UIC or DOIC at 8 Canadian Championships. After joining Softball Canada's Officiating Development Committee in 2008, Jeff was appointed as National Director of Umpires in 2013. An educator for 20 years, Jeff is currently a digital learning coach, helping to support his colleagues and their students in schools across the Anglophone West School District to leverage technology for teaching and learning. He's also a senior consultant with Educational Collaborators and STS Education in California, speaking at conferences and working with schools across North America around 21st century literacy and learning. Jeff and his wife Tracy have 4 grown children and they live in Fredericton, and we are excited to welcome Jeff to our webinar this evening.
Hello.
I mean, we've got to give you some kind of applause, and I'm sure the audience is already doing it, but we'll do it anyway.
I'm sure they are. They're probably throwing things at their screen about now.
Super excited, Jeff. Thank you so much for agreeing to be our first speaker of the 2022 webinar series. I understand you have a little bit of some introductory remarks that you'd like to share.
Sure.
So Scott and I will go off screen as soon as we can see your presentation and make sure that your slide is up correctly. And then we will join you when you are finished for the Q&A period.
My screen share is not working.
Oh, let me see if I can make you a presenter.
Yeah.
Don't worry, folks. We did practice this.
There we go. Now it's working.
Okay.
There we go. Thanks.
Okay, so just enjoy, and Scott and I will see you shortly.
Thanks. So thanks, Frankie, and thanks, Scott. So Frankie asked me and thought this was a good idea for some reason. So she's asked me, and what we wanted to do tonight is to talk a little bit about our National Officials Program. And I wanted to take sort of a few minutes and sort of give you some broad strokes about where we're at and how it lives and what our role is in terms of the overall international and domestic programming that we support. So let's go to the next slide. And maybe not. There we go. So the National Officials Program with Softball Canada, there are a bunch of people on that. The core of it is the Officiating Development Committee, of which Scott and Frankie are 2 members of 6. We're supported by Donna Ozarko, who's the manager of officiating and a bunch of other things at Softball Canada. So she's the glue that holds everything together. And we have a board liaison, Andrea Wolf. So the committee itself, and a lot of people ask me all the time, you know, what are we looking for? What's the selection process? We don't have a lot of turnover on the committee, but it's when there is one that a position that opens up, or and every year there's 3 positions that turn over. It's important that we get the right people, and we've got so many great people across the country who have lent their names to stand on the committee and have applied for the committee. And I wish we could have more people involved. But the composition right now is balanced gender. It's got regional representation from coast to coast, and those are the kinds of things we're looking for. But personally, as National Director of Umpires, when we go to select those people, what I'm also looking for is somebody who has some progressive ideas and values, is forward-thinking, and is willing to take a few risks in terms of sort of where they see the program goes. One of the things that people find out really quick when they join the committee is that they have a tremendous amount of opportunity for input into our programming, a lot of ownership. I'm very much here's your portfolio and you go and do it. And I think Scott and Frankie would tell you that we need to have they need to be able to take the bull by the horns and just get to work and not worry too much about checking back with me on every little bit. So we really have two pieces to our national officials program. There's the international side, and we'll talk about that in a second, but also our domestic side. So our domestic programming is integral to what we do, and that probably affects most of the people, most of our audience here. But there's also a significant international component. Internationally, we have an obligation to provide officials and develop officials for international events. These are all high-level events and really is our elite group. We call our level 5s, but also even within that group, at the WBSC level, there's some different levels and certifications that are granted there. We also provide a lot of input to international programs. We're very involved at the international level in terms of developing rules, interpreting rules, education opportunities, those kinds of things. And we also collaborate with and support other national federations. So we have a lot of exchange programs with Australia, New Zealand, the US, Europe. And we've also done some education programming here and there. Haven't done a lot lately just because of COVID, but we've supported, a lot of our umpires have supported webinar series with the WBSC Americas for the English-speaking countries in Latin America recently. That was a year ago or so ago. And we've done some training on the ground in places like Jamaica, where we've gone in and run some clinics for them. So there's all kinds of interesting opportunities where we're supporting, and Canada's looked at as a leader around the world. And of course, we also are involved in supporting certification seminars for our own officials and other international officials primarily from the USA. We partner a lot on international certification seminars, which our international officials have to work through to be able to work internationally and certified internationally. Our domestic programs, and here's just a few things that we do. Of course, national events. Everybody understands Canadian Championships. And so, that's the core of our program. That's, I guess, the highlight of our program is our national events every summer. I guess we're up to 12 Canadian Championships now with the addition of the U23 women. And then, of course, to support those national events and support the sport across the country domestically, we have a lot of education programming. Our National Official Certification Program is world-renowned, and it's actually been copied, emulated in many countries around the world. The level 1 through 5 program with our manuals, and so a lot of countries have used our template to develop their own programming. We also offer a lot of national clinics, level 4, IE, and the national mechanics schools. So, those are education. Blue Convention, of course, is our flagship program. So it's every 3 years, and it's the highlight, for most of our umpires across the country. A lot of manuals work and rules interpretation, those kinds of things. And we also are busy in supporting resources like rule book, case book, and OCP manuals, and more recently, digital resources. A lot of people don't even realize that we have our own YouTube channel and a bunch of other things. And I'm gonna talk a little bit about recruitment and retention here. So the one thing, I think the most misunderstood piece of our program, and I wanted to speak just a little bit about it. So Softball Canada, and this is not just the Umpires program, but this is the Softball Canada program in general. Our provincial and territorial associations, our PSOs, are fully independent. We provide support, but we have no oversight role with PSOs. So, you know, we often get asked to, you know, help intervene in some way. And really, you know, I used to work with a guy, and he said, you know, if you want to know how organizations and how individuals work together, follow the money. Well, Softball Canada really provides no funding to PSOs. PSOs provide funding to Softball Canada. So really, if you think about it that way, collectively, the PSOs are Softball Canada. They vote for the board of directors. You know, they have a lot of input, and so you know, that's the one thing, is that we work with them, but we're not an oversight body in any way, shape, or form. We do a lot of collaboration around Canadian Championship staffing, organizing regional clinics, and recruitment and retention. But I do want to give a shout out to all the provincial and territorial UICs. I'll tell you right now, they are the hardest working people in our program. And we have got some great provincial programs and some great provincial leaders. But our PUICs, our territorial UICs, are the hardest working people in the program. And they are the most valuable people we have, because we can do all we want, but really on the ground, that's where things get happening. So 2022 priorities. I've got the recruitment and retention highlighted. You know, when we look at, and it's not just organizations like Softball Canada and sporting organizations, but it's really business. You know, we're having, you know, you hear all the time about shortage of labor, shortage of staff, restaurants closing, businesses closing because they don't have enough staff. I'm a teacher. You know, we don't have enough teachers. There's not enough nurses. There's not enough of anything right now. And when you think, you know, a lot of people say, oh, you know, the young people don't want to take those jobs. It's not the young people that are leaving. In this pandemic, what we're finding, the research is saying, is that it's the older people. It's the people who are close to retirement who are saying, I'm going now. They're jumping out and they're getting out, and they're taking their leave now. And you know, then so as an organization, we're seeing the same thing. I think our biggest challenge in the year or two ahead is going to be, how are we going to manage getting some of those people back who have taken a year or two off because of COVID? Our national registration numbers before COVID were hovering 3,700 in the few years before. The year after, I think they went down to like 1,800. Last year, you know, up a little bit, and we're hoping to get back up to somewhere between 25, 27, maybe even up close to 3,000 if we can for 2022. But that's our biggest challenge. And you know, we've got a lot of softball that's going to start sort of reemerging, and we're going to need the officials to support those games as players and people come back to the sport, and it, you know, our society opens back up again. Other priorities for the year, you know, we got to continue to revise our resources to align with the new rulebook. The new rulebook, the WBSC format, is really exciting. I'm really happy with how it's gone, and kudos, shout out to Don Farr for leading that project. And I know that you wouldn't believe the amount of people and hands that have touched that project over the last year and a half, 2 years here in Canada, who have helped support that project. And I'm really excited to tell you that you know, the rule book is on its way to the printers. I understand that, like everything else, there's some shortages and supply chains, and paper's not is one of them, and so we may have a little delay, but hopefully, you know, in the next few weeks, you're going to see that new rule book roll out across the country. I'm really excited about, you know, the format of it. It's got a very simplified format, not a lot of repetition, no repetition, and so that's cool. Education, working on developing new print and digital resources and updating those. And one of the real keys, and you know, I've said, when you become an ODC member, I always challenge them, each of them, when they take on the role, is I want you to think about what your legacy in the program is going to be. What are you passionate about? And so a couple of umpires in our program in our ODC are very passionate about elite umpire development and how we can create better umpires for and have better results internationally. And so I'm excited about some of the initiatives and things that have been taking place at that level. So that's really kind of in a box, all of it. So I'm going to stop sharing now, and hopefully everybody else comes back to visit, and we can have a little.
Jeff, thank you so much. What a great overview of the role of Softball Canada, the ODC. Thank you so much for doing that.
Well, there,
and thank you,
there is so much more.
Well, you took all the questions, so what a
and we should probably tell the audience we did not give him the question in advance.
But
I have no idea what's coming.
Well, we gave you an idea of the topics, but not the specific questions. But I'm really, I just want to say again how much I appreciate you taking the time to do this, because I do, as the chair of the National Committee on Recruitment and Retention, I do think that 2022 is going to be the closest season that we will have to pre-pandemic. I really do. I think Canadian championships are going to run. I think we're going to have as close to 2019 as possible. And so I just think it's great that people have a chance and an opportunity to connect directly with you, given that there has been a big break. And since that was one of the things that you highlighted, and given the selfish stake that I have in that conversation about recruitment and retention, I'd like to focus a few minutes on that, if we could, just to first say every sporting organization is struggling with their numbers. So we're not unique there. And I think there's a challenge in trying to remember that 95% of the people that go into officiating have participated in the sport in some capacity, right? So if the people participating aren't large in numbers, then your officiating ranks typically aren't large either. But I'm wondering, what's one of the, like, how do you think we should recruit new officials? What's something, like, you've been in the game a long time. Have you seen a strategy that's worked well? Or,
you know, former NDU Brian Van Oss, he put it really well. It's one person at a time. You're not going to go in and recruit 30 people. You might have a new clinic with 30 people, but those 30 people came with individual contacts from somebody. And you know, Brian, when he was PUIC in British Columbia, he would go into the most remotest communities and the smallest little places and find a handful of people and provide a clinic for them. And you know, people would say, you know, why are we wasting our time and energy and effort to go into this small community? It's away from nowhere for 3 or 4 people. And Brian said, because that's 3 or 4 people that we didn't have before. And so I think it's really important that it's going to be an individual effort. It's going to be done at the community level. There's not a whole lot that we can do other than to support and provide some ideas and, you know, some resources for them. But it's going to be done at the local level, just by reaching out and contacting and connecting with people who are involved in the sport. And so it's a one-on-one recruitment. That's the only way.
I love that answer. That was actually one of the first things I said to the committee when we met for the first time last year. because you had said that to me and it really resonated with me. And of course, I really like Brian Van Os, one of my favorite people. So I was like, Brian Van Os once said, recruitment is done one official at a time. So I just love that. So I'm just going to ask one more question related to this before I turn it over to Scott, because I know he's got some good ones as well. What are some of the best retention strategies that you've seen over the course of your involvement in the sport?
Wow. People like to be recognized. It really is, you know, and so, you know, just simple things. So, you know, a lot of people don't even know about it yet, but we've had like a little pin program running now that we, you know, support for provinces with or collaborate with our provinces with, and you know, so a 5-year official gets a 5-year pin now. A 10-year official will get a 10-year pin, and so on and so forth. And you know, it doesn't seem like much, but there's a lot of people that will say, I want to get my 25-year pin. So I might stay around a couple more years if I'm at year 23. And those milestone markers are really important, that we look at those at the local level, at the provincial level, at the national level. And, you know, so the neat thing about it is that any province or any local association could have a 5 or 10-year pin. But what's neat about this is now that an official in Newfoundland is getting the same 5-year pin as an official in BC and being recognized as part of the same community. So people want to be part of their community. They want to be part of something bigger than themselves. And so it all comes down to recognition. It all comes down to them feeling like they're valued in the sport. And sometimes it's not easy because, you know, when we've got coaches and players and fans and other people who continually tell them they're not very good at what they do, or you know, present other barriers. There's you know, and there's a lot of other things pulling people's time now, especially with COVID. You know, how do we retain people when you know their jobs and families are being upended and turned over? And you know, so for us, if we can provide them a safe space for them to come and feel some sense of normalcy, I think that's a big hook too. You know, as we come out of the pandemic, if this can remind them of what they, you know, what it used to be like.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, Scott, your turn.
All right. Well,
Oh, see, I did tell you, good cop, bad cop. See, did you see that look when I turned it over to you?
Oh, I can't hear Scott.
No.
There we go.
All right, better?
Yeah.
Apparently webinar just decides my headset's only good for 20 minutes and then off it goes. So I'll keep my thoughts on webinar to myself. I don't like it. So I'm actually going to start keeping in the recruitment retention vein, but I do want to start a little bit personal, and I do have a farther question out of here. Why did you start officiating?
So I had been refereeing basketball while I was in university, but every summer I had been going home, and I used to play in a league, and I had was kind of the the organizer of the league. It was just a little local men's rural league, and so there was a couple of guys that we ran it. And but then the one summer I had it was the first time I wasn't going back home, and I had been working a lot of basketball during the school year just because I loved basketball and I found officiating to be interesting. I was always interested in officiating softball, but was still too much of a player. But I had been speaking with one of my basketball partners, a regular one, a fellow by the name of Dave McManus. So Dave refereed everything. He refereed university level hockey, university level basketball. He was a baseball umpire that worked the Olympics in Los Angeles. He had even worked when they went on strike. He was at the Sky Dome. They had because they couldn't bring the umpires. So Dave was a well-known official in the city. and I had done a lot of basketball with Dave. And I mentioned to him one game halftime or something, and I said, "Yeah, I'd like to get into softball. I'm going to be around this summer." And he goes, "You need to contact a fellow by the name of Wayne Brown." And that name should need no introduction. So Wayne was a long time national director of umpires and founder of Blue Convention, and just he was Mr. Softball internationally and domestically. And so so I followed up, had no idea who Wayne Brown was, phoned Wayne, and he said, "Oh yeah, come on out." So I had a nice chat with him on the phone. And a couple weeks later, he phoned me and said, "We're going to have a spring clinic. Come on out." So I went out and met Wayne and got hooked. So for me, it was just, I wanted to be part of the game. I didn't really have any contacts here in Fredericton, in the softball community, to play. So I just said, it's time to jump into officiating. And that was 1986, 85 or 86, a long time ago.
Which is great. I mean, I'll just do this to you because 86 is when I started umpiring as well. I was a little younger than you, though. So that's the start. Now we're getting to the question, I promise. But why did you stay? Because we know that most recruit, like if we keep 50% of our people, as Frankie said, we're doing really well. So you were one of the 50%, and you stayed. Why? And you stayed for quite a while.
Yeah, and it's never been, like, I know, people have different motivations. For me, it's not money. For me, it was, I think, a couple of things. I really enjoyed being a part of a group of people who I enjoyed spending time with. Going to tournaments and hanging out, after in the parking lot and just chatting about the game. But I think the other thing was, it was a challenge. I think that umpires who continue and umpires who are on a competitive stream into an elite stream umpire and officiate for the same reason that players play. It's a challenge. They want to get better. They want to reach the highest levels that they can, and just see what comes out of it. And and it all worked out okay for me. But I don't know if there's one reason, but I think those would be a couple of them.
All right, so which you answered it just like I thought you would. So I'm very excited. So early in your remarks, you mentioned the word safe, and then you just mentioned community. So I just wondered if you could maybe frame using those two things as starting points, but kind of talk about the importance of equity, diversity, and inclusion in our game as it relates to safe communities and making people welcome in our sport.
Oh, well, there's a topic. When I got involved in the sport, and as I've been an official, it was a bunch of old, maybe not old, but white guys, older. There wasn't a lot of diversity. We had one female umpire at the time that was involved, but she didn't even umpire on the field a whole lot. She did a lot more of, she was our assigning officer and did some other things. So as I've sort of, how should I put this? When I came to Fredericton, I was a pretty sheltered young man. I came from rural New Brunswick, small rural community, graduating class of like 40 in my high school. Hadn't seen a person of color other than First Nations people in our community. Didn't really know, but then when I came to UNB and to Fredericton, I think I grew a lot, and began to understand that there was a lot of really interesting things and people and exciting ideas that are percolating out there, that need to be supported. So when I look at my own journey, it was a pretty easy one. I didn't face any challenges or barriers. I saw lots of me, ahead of me. I see lots of role models. But I think when we look at our, at the demographics of our country, of our world, geopolitically, and our local communities, we're seeing a lot more diversity. And, so on the individual level, on the human level, it's really important that people feel like they can be part of us and to join our community, our group, our whatever, our family, and that they can walk in and feel that. But that's a really difficult thing for people to do if they don't see themselves represented in those communities. So it's, we've kind of got to break the barriers down and drag, some people, or make it very inviting for people to come in. I don't know if we're going to drag them in, but make it very inviting and try to encourage them to come in and to join us. Not only because it's the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do. If we want our sport to grow, not just officiating, but all kinds of pieces of our sport, we've got to make it open and accessible to all kinds of people. We've done of all genders, all ethnicities, you name it. I think we've done a really pretty good job of being noted as a fairly safe space for LGBTQ. I think we've done a decent job of and working hard on gender parity. I think one of the things that we need to do more of is to find and showcase and highlight people of color within our program, so that young boys and girls and adults who might even think about umpiring see themselves represented and find people that look and represent themselves in the program. But it's a smart thing to do. If we it's a growth strategy at the very it's a human thing to do, and it's the right thing to do, but it's also a smart thing to do.
Well, it's always nice when the right thing to do is a smart thing to do as well. So I mean it's great. I mean, we all, I think everybody that's listening, loves this sport, but and the more we can make it for everybody, the better it gets for everybody. It really just, the more opportunities you have. Now, just one little follow-up: are there any particular national programs that you want to put, talk about that we have that focus on this, or if people want to be involved, how do they get to be involved?
You mean on diversity issues?
Yeah, diversity, like, yeah, in this wearing, where, if there's somebody out there that says, I'd really, I look at my umpiring group, but it's not, it doesn't look like me. How do I find more of me? Or they look too much of me. How do I get less of me?
There's too much of me.
How do they help?
Yeah. Well, I think, and I said, I think we've done a fairly decent job, and it hasn't, I'm not sure if it's been if we've had a real laser sharp focus on it, but LGBTQ people tend to tell us that they find this a very safe environment, and maybe because I don't know, you'd have to ask to sort of figure it out, but I think that we've had a really strong group in our women in umpiring group across the country in the last few years, and we're continuing to make some moves to identify and to promote women on and off the diamond as we go forward. We've got great representation from the Olympics with Frankie and Jen there this year, and those are I can't tell you how many people have said to me, wow, to have 2 female officials from Canada at the Olympics, what that does for recruiting opportunities, what that does for young women who are maybe playing, but now they see 2 Canadian women in such a high profile role. That can't hurt. We've got we've made initiatives in at our Canadian Championship level, Canada Games level. You know, I often said, you know, I think the proudest moment that I have had, and you may have heard this if you've been at Blue Convention, but the proudest moment that I've had as National Director of Umpires was at the Canada Games in Winnipeg, what, 3-4 years ago now, 5 years ago. And the championship game, I was home. I was watching it on a Sunday morning, sitting on my couch, and Vic Rauter was that famous voice was doing the broadcast for the championship game on the women's Canada Games, and you know, he said they put the umpires' names up on the screen and went across all of them just like they do in the major league level, and he said, you know, we have an all Canadian crew, or an all female crew at this Canada Games final. And we not only had 6 great young officials, female officials.
There's a few people in the crew that appreciate that you said young.
Said young, yes. And we had 2 more who had just worked the game before, right? And so it was, you know, to me, that was a huge testament to our program and to the hard work that a lot of people, you know, at the ODC level, at the provincial levels, at, you know, all kinds of places had put in to make sure that that could happen, to facilitate that happening. And again, it's those kinds of events, those kinds of that kind of visibility that's going to keep young females coming to our program. You know, and I think we can do the same thing with people of color. You know, we need to, you know, I know we have people of color in our program. We got to do a better job of making sure that they're visible to a whole bunch of different people.
Excellent. And just so everybody knows, if you have any questions or anything, just throw them up in the chat. We can either ask Jeff at the end, or if it's something really pertinent, we'll ask right as we go. So just type your messages in the chat as you wish to go. And I believe this one's for you, Frankie.
Okay, thanks. Just before we leave, I'm going to pull a Scott. Just before we leave, equity, diversity, and inclusion is such a huge topic of conversation at institutions of higher learning, K to 12, which you would be fully aware of. You know, just government organizations, and I just, since I've been embedded in this for a little while as well, I wonder how much education of our members is required to get people to the same place, right? Like, because I'm wondering if you have a personal framework that helps you, like personal experiences that help you to understand and believe that that's important, or if it's been in combination or conjunction with professional development opportunities that you've had to engage in through your work.
I think a lot of both. Obviously, you know, in education, that's you know, diversity and respecting difference is a huge thing. I think, you know, a lot of us have very strongly held personal values as well around diversity and education and inclusion. You know, I think as a national organization, you know, we have some, and a lot of people don't know this, but you know, there's a lot of safe sport work going on in the background with our national UICs and Canadian Championship UICs and those leaders. And you know, hopefully as we move into the next few years, we're going to see that work its way down to a more broad level. But you know, and you know, it kind of sounds silly to say it, but all it does, it comes down to treating people with respect. And you know, how do we want to be treated? And you know, we've had some issues and things that we've had to deal with at the national level around, you know, creation of unsafe spaces for females at Canadian Championship events. We've had all kinds of those kinds of things, but not, I shouldn't say all kinds of them, but there's been the incident here and there that we've had to deal with. But I think it's important that, you know, we be very clear that those kinds of behaviors aren't going to be tolerated. And I know I'm getting off of the inclusion and diversity thing, but I think it's the same thing. You know, we have to be very clear that when people come into our program, that they need to be welcomed. And you know, it's all about just treating people with the same way that you would want your daughter or your son to be treated as they come into the program.
Right.
There's no magic formula to any of this.
Well, I really appreciate you taking some time to address it, because I just think that talking about it and like that's part of the education of why it's important. So I appreciate that. Speaking of education, switching gears a little bit. I mean, the pandemic really gave us an opportunity to engage in clinic delivery in a completely different way. And that story that you said at the beginning about Vanner going off into a remote community and teaching a clinic for 5 people, those kinds of instances are a lot easier to bring people from all distances together to learn from the same person, or to not be bound by a geographical area to have access to educational material. So I'm wondering what you see sort of as the future of education, like more online clinic delivery, but also with our rule books, are we going to continue to have print versions, or are we going to be only digital? Are we going to have both? Where do you see?
So I think you're going to see, and I've been really impressed. I mean, we've moved our level 4 and IE clinics online. Obviously, a National Mechanics School is a little bit more of a challenge to move online. They're probably going to stay in person. I think there's, you know, there's space for both of those. But I've been really impressed by some of the initiatives that our provinces have taken. And I think all of them have done some sort of digital delivery of our certification clinics, especially level 1 introductory ones. I think every province, you know, I'll just use an example, and it almost comes back to the diversity question too. It ties in with that, Frankie, is that if you look at here in the Atlantic region, we had Nova Scotia, PEI, New Brunswick, and Newfoundland all get together and host a female level 1 clinic, and it was supported by some funding that came from Softball Canada, and I'm not quite sure where the original funding came from, but could have been the Olympic Committee or Canadian Olympic Committee or one of those groups. But it was really focused on reaching young females, and so they did a really bang-up job. And the neat thing about it was, you know, I think there was like 40 people that attended that seminar from all 4 provinces. But those young females now, those young women, as they go through the program, they already know each other. They've participated virtually in this, and New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, PEI in particular are close enough that, you know, they can get together and work tournaments, you know, with a couple of hours drive or 3 hours drive. And, you know, so it really creates these communities of interest and communities of support where, you know, they would probably never even have known each other back in I didn't know anybody from Nova Scotia until I went to my first Canadian Championship. And, you know, it's right next door. Didn't know anybody from PEI. But now we can use these tools to develop our communities and to get people connected with each other a way sooner in the process, in their growth and development process. But I think we're going to see more and more use of digital tools, both at the national and provincial level. My real passion is, and I know that Brent's worked on this and we've worked on this, it sounds real easy, but it's not. It's very expensive, but asynchronous learning platforms, course development, and
non-teacher folks, what does asynchronous learning mean?
Oh, it means sort of kind of anytime, anywhere, where, you know, you would sign in and you would walk your way through a bunch of modules online at your time and at your pace. So you could you could just log in, you watch a couple of videos, you maybe do an answer question, you read some stuff, and so you just work your way through the course. And so I think that this is also going to be part of our future. The challenge with those is that they take some real cash and some real know-how to build them. When we first looked at doing our level 1 or an introductory course online, our first pricing that we got from the professional course, so the builders and the housers of this on the internet, they wanted like 40 grand to put one of these courses together and to host it. So they're not as it's not just building a slide deck and putting it online. There's a lot more to it. But I know that Brent continues. So Brent Chadwick, who's our National Education Officer, continues to look at that. He's still passionate about trying to get that, up and running. As far as the rule book goes, I think we're going to have a print rule book for a while. I think people want that simply because, especially I don't want to generalize too much, but the older generation, if I was officiating, I mean, mine, I have 2 of them. There's one and it's got all kinds of things in it, right? And it sits here on my desk where I work, and the other one is in my car. So I've always got one close by. And so I think that just having that here, I'm still a paper guy, and so I'll still use it. But I think, the digital version has been available for a couple of years now, where you can download it, and the new one will be digital as well. So it'll be out fairly soon. So I think we're going to see kind of a hybrid approach to rule books, and they'll both versions will be available.
Thank you. Scott, you have another question?
I do. I got a couple actually.
What do I?
So we're gonna go with this one's a little easier. We're actually gonna talk about some actual umpiring stuff right now instead of we're gonna move a little less big and small. So first question, as I set you up for something, obviously, what was your favorite / most memorable moment on the field as an official?
That's easy.
Okay. I don't know what it is. You have to share.
So it was the 1999 Junior Women's World Championships in Taiwan. So it was a really interesting event. It was my first international event. Got to meet some really cool people from all over the world. Hans Troelsen was the other Canadian umpire who went, and 2 of us were there. I was fortunate enough to be assigned the plate in the championship game between the USA and Japan. This was, and I didn't really know it at the time, I guess, who could have. It was the first time that Jenny Finch and Yueko Ueno pitched against each other.
Oh, wow.
So it was their first head-to-head competition as 19-year-olds at this event in the championship game. It was pretty interesting. I don't remember much about the game, but I do remember one thing that happened. It was so the Americans were down, I want to say 3-1 or 3-2 at the time. Maybe it was, and so they had a runner on first, and the batter hits a shot right over first base, like right over first base, and it's fair and it's going right to the fence. And so everybody's just running. For some reason, both the first base umpire did not go out. Sorry. Brian Chow, who was umpiring at second base, takes off for the outfield. Have no idea why. So, Pavel Pracher was at third, so he kind of covers second and third. But the girl, so the runner at first comes in and scores, which puts them down by 1 run. But the runner at first, or the batter runner, was, that's the thing, Julio Rodriguez, who was the official at first base, turned his back to watch the ball and didn't see an obstruction on the batter runner, which I had right in front of me. So because I was watching the ball and I saw the obstruction, called the obstruction. And then as that runner, batter runner, comes around third base, she's obstructed again. Ooh, third base player. So she's been obstructed twice. And I immediately said, so they got the ball in, we got the play stopped. I had obstruction both, but I put her back to third. And here's my rationale. They almost got the runner, like the throw from the outfield was only about 10 feet behind the runner from first base who scored. So my rationale was there was no way that the batter runner was going to be able to score on that. So I put her back to third. So the American coach comes out and she sees both obstructions. She saw my arm out both times. And she said, can you, I explained to her what I saw, and she said, can you check with your crew? And I said, sure. Of course, Julio at first base does not speak any English. Brian at second base does not speak any English. Pavel Crocker, who's from Czech, speaks a little English. And there's me. So I called them all in. We met behind the pitcher's mound, sort of in the shortstop area. And I just looked at them. I said, she wants me to check. And so they didn't know what I was saying. So they all nodded their head. And so I said, okay. And I just looked at Pavel and I said, you got anything different? He goes, well, he says, I saw what, I go with what you saw. And I said, okay. So as I turned around and came back, she's standing there. And I said, I checked with my crew. And the American coach, I can't remember who it was now, but she said, yeah, I saw, good, that's fine. Didn't the American runner at third base, who would have been the tying run, and this was like in the bottom of the sixth inning or like late in the game, 2 pitches later gets picked off.
Oh.
And they lost 3-2. Wayno won her first competition head-to-head with Jenny Finch. And so that was probably the thing that I remembered the most. That tournament was really interesting because Wayne Brown, so I'm down in the dressing room like day 2, and I'm sitting there, and Debbie Lauterbach came in, and Sandy Adams from New Zealand came into the dressing room, and they said, oh, there's a friend of yours upstairs. He said to say hi. And I said, who do I know here? They said, yeah, Wayne Brown. I said, what? Wayne. So Wayne had he had flown halfway around the world to come to that tournament. I went upstairs. I said, Wayne, what are you doing here? He said, I just came to check up on my boys. And that was the kind of person Wayne was, right? And so he came. He tried to rent a car and decided driving in Taipei was not a good idea. So he just took taxis everywhere after that. But I think the biggest thing I remember from that tournament was we had a rain delay, and it rained every afternoon in Taipei. When we saw the schedule, we started like at 8 in the morning, and our last game was like at 3 in the afternoon, and we couldn't understand why. But we found out like after day 1 or day 2 that it rained every afternoon at 5 o'clock, torrential thunderstorms. So they had to get all their games in the morning and early afternoon. And the rains came early one day, and I had been given a bunch of flags by Canadian flags and pins by our MP, and they always filled the stadium with elementary kids. Like the local schools would bring and just fill this 7,000 seat stadium with kids. And I probably had 100 or 200 flags. And Debbie said, let's just go upstairs. She had some pins. I said, we'll give away some of this stuff. I said, good, I'll get rid of it. It's out of my bag. So I took it upstairs, and we walked through the concourse, because it was a professional baseball stadium. It's one of their Chinese professional baseball league stadiums that we were playing in. And we walked through the concourse, and I gave it a bunch of flags. And as I turned around to walk back, all I saw were all of these young Taiwanese kids waving their Canadian flags. And I think that was probably my most proudest moment as an international official. It didn't even happen on the field. It happened just in the concourse. So that was pretty cool.
Excellent. All right. Thought I was getting a short answer, but that's okay. The This was technically the long answer question comes now. You talked at the beginning about you stayed in officiating for a challenge. Obviously, international events are a challenge. Canadian Championships events are a challenge. They're hard. You know, we have to work hard. So I was just looking, so maybe, I don't know, 3, 5 things. What are you, as national director, when you go to Canadian Championships, what are you looking for in the officials on the field? What are the things that make, you can say things that make the hair stand up in your arm in the good way, you know, the things that you get excited about when you see, like, what are, you know, because obviously you have a chance to direct or shape what the evaluators and stuff are looking for. You know, in your position, you get to set some policy, like what type of people, what type of officials, what kind of characteristics are you / the national program looking for people that want to take that challenge and go from Canadian, you know, local to international, to domestic to international events?
Approachable. It's one of the things I love about Frankie. You know, she's so approachable on the diamond. Like, she's just got that smile, right? And you never see her with a scowl. I don't know if I've ever seen you angry at somebody. But you know, and I don't want to see somebody that looks happy all the time, you know, with a big smile on their face, but they have to look approachable. They have to have that demeanor about them that says, you can talk to me, you can come and see me, and not have their back up, you know, when a coach looks at them, you know, and you know, turn around the wrong way. I think, how should I put this? Athletic. I get really excited when I see athleticism amongst our officials. And a lot of people say, well, you know, that old traditional, you know, official stands in a spot, what do they need to be athletic for? But when I look and I see, and I'll just use an example, Emma Jerome-Smith. When I see Emma work a game, the first time I saw Emma, it was the first, I'd gone into the Women's Canadian Championship a few years ago, and it was her first game, and she was working first base. And when they broke from the baselines to go to their starting positions on that first half inning, just watching her run to her starting position, it was like 30, 40 feet. And I just went, wow. Like, just the athleticism that she portrayed, you know, and so that to me is so important. If you're going to be an elite international official now, you've got to be an athlete. You've got to look like one of the players. You've got to be in the same kind of condition as one of the players, and you've got to work as hard in getting and staying in those kinds of positions, same kind of condition as the players do. So those would be my 2 biggest things: approachability and athleticism. Those are the 2 things, the 2 must-haves for any official for me.
All right, Frankie, I stole enough time. Maybe you get another one.
You know what? We've had a few people that have commented it just in the question box that they've dropped, they had to go to another call or whatever. So just in the interest of time, I'm just trying to make sure we covered all of our, like, can't let Jeff go until these questions are answered once. We did actually, thank you to all of you who participated and submitted questions in the question box. We did actually address every single one of them just through the conversation, so that was great. We do have one person who has their hand up, so I don't know if any of the attendees are able to take themselves off mute. Rick Northrop?
I don't know if they can turn their mics on.
Okay, so Rick, feel free to, if you're not able to do that, to submit your question or comment in the chat. Scott, I'm just reviewing our questions and making sure we hit everything that we wanted to.
All right, well, I'm going to ask Jeff a follow-up because, well, I'm going to be greedy. Staying in the competition world, I think this is going to, I guess, how do we as an organization adapt to or do better as far as making our Canadian championships, I would say, more comfortable or more accessible to everybody that wants to umpire at them. You know, given the broad range of needs of people that want to umpire, we don't have, you know, we're moving away from the model that was, you know, do as you're told, don't talk, you know, kind of thing. We're going to it's a different world now. You know, how do we as an organization take care of our people at Canadian championships?
We're tremendously blessed with a group of leaders who are willing to give up a week to become a UIC or a deputy UIC at our Canadian championships. And they're all A1 people. You know, our program is blessed to have them, and we benefit from their expertise and their knowledge more and more. You know, as we talk to them, as we work with them, you know, we've got to start with they're the people on the ground who are creating the environment with the teams, with our umpire team. For that, you know, that's what I meant. Not the teams, but our team. So we really have to start with them, and to make sure that you know, that they are able to, I guess, create that great environment for people to blossom and flourish. We've gotten away from the old school where, you know, nightly meetings and lots of you know, directions and you know, the the finger shaking and all that kind of stuff, and you know, and kangaroo courts and shining shoes, and you know, we've gotten away from that into a more progressive ideals around treating people with respect. And just for me, it's, you know, once you've gotten to a Canadian championship, we're assuming you're a darn good umpire. Your province wouldn't have sent you if you're not. And you know, we just have to let people show us what they have. You know, put them in opportunities where they can shine, give everybody an equal chance, and you know, and not have unattainable expectations for people. Just say, you know, show us your best stuff, have fun more than anything. Especially, you know, and I think it changes because there's more on the line the further up you go for both the teams and the umpires. Especially if you're on sort of an elite competitive stream as an umpire, and you know, your goals are, your aspirations are maybe international. You know, then things come, but you know, you've got to be able to handle that and still be able to have fun and still be approachable and still do all the things that you need to do. You're still a member of a team. And, you know, so we have to approach it just, you know, good coaches build good teams. So we have to depend on the coaches we have on site. And it's tough when you're coming in as a UIC or a deputy UIC, and you're working with people that you probably haven't met before. And, you know, you've got, you know, a day and a half to have a finely tuned group of people who are working together. And that's the nice, you know, that's the nice thing, and I guess the real gem about our national official certification program that other sports have emulated and other national federations have modeled after, is that it gives everybody the same starting point and the same information and the same knowledge base to be able to come and succeed.
Northrop here, if you can hear me.
Oh, there we go. Hi, Rick.
First of all, I'd like to thank Softball Canada for hosting this event, and the three of you for providing all this pertinent information. It's very pleasant to gain this information. One thing that Jeff had mentioned quite earlier in regards to service pins, I'm just wondering for my local organization, where would I find the requirements and how would they be attained?
So what province are you in?
Ontario.
Ontario, okay. So what we did the first 2 years, which were 2019 and 2020, is that we based those service pins off of exam results. So anybody who wrote a national exam and indicated that they were celebrating, for lack of a better term, a 20th anniversary registration, or a 15th or a 10th or 5th, we would identify those people and send those names along with the pins to the province and territory. So your province and territory for 2019 and 2020 would have received those with a list of names of people who were supposed to receive them. What we did with anybody over 25 years, so if you were registered for 35 years and indicated that on your exam, we would send a pin for everybody who's over 25 years and above. So everybody got a pin there. So there was a lot of 25-year plus pins that went out those first 2 years, especially the first year. Chat with your local organization or your provincial organization, and they should be able to arrange to at least get those first 2 years. We're still working now. We'll be talking to the PTUICs very shortly, and we've had some conversations about how best to manage that program, so it doesn't become a bureaucratic administrative nightmare on volunteer time, because the way we were doing it was. And so we're going to try to just have a little more in the province's hands, and we're just going to supply them with the pins so they can do what they need to do.
All right, I think Frankie's warming up one more question, but as we're over the hour mark now. But so as Frankie asks the last question and Jeff answers the last question, if anybody else has any questions for Jeff, this is your chance to type them into the chat and the question box. We can ask. You can make sure that your comment gets to Jeff. So Frankie.
Thank you. So yes, while we're waiting for any last minute participants to think about their amazing questions that have been burning for them, you know, we've just had the chance to have a conversation with you about some amazing things that are happening, you know, recruitment retention, digital resources, high performance program. And I'm just curious about, pardon me, how you foresee executing on these amazing ideas, given that we're kind of tight on resources.
Yeah, so we're like every other organization. We're membership driven. So our revenues come from members, and we've got a lot of things to do with that, with those dollars, and fewer dollars in the coffers. So it is going to be tight, but it's about priorities. And right now, you know, our number one priority, other than our international commitments to provide umpires to certain events, is to grow our ranks back. It has to be. We need to, you know, to get those dollars back up, but also to get our numbers back up to grow the game and to recover and to make sure that that our sport that we all love is in a healthy space. And so you know, that's where we're going to spend some priorities. We've got there's some, and I don't know where Donna finds the money, but the COVID money is out there a little bit, you know, and so there are some programs that we can tap into, you know, to get some resources. But the number one thing is the volunteer resources. And if people only knew, like I know how much time that you and Scott and Brent and Jen and Don and Sandra put into our national organization in your own different portfolios and in an overall manner. You know, we wouldn't be able to do half of what we do without the commitment of core volunteers on our ODC and people who work on committees. Like I said, I talked about it earlier. I wouldn't be surprised if there were 50 people who had fingerprints on that new rule book from across the country on both the slow pitch and fast pitch side. And, you know, Don coordinated them all, but they all had an input and played a real vital role in getting that project across the finish line. And now we've got a couple of other pieces of it to do, but, you know, that's, it's about people who have passions for the game, and we'll make it happen. We'll just, it's about prioritizing and finding the people who can. Wayne Brown, I keep coming back to Wayne. Wayne said to me one time, because I asked him, he was working the tournament in Guatemala, and he phoned me up 2 days before. He said, I'm going to send you a schedule and an umpire list. He said, I need the first 4 days of schedule done. He said, I don't have time to do it. So he sent it to me. I said, why do you want me to do this? And this was before I became an international umpire. This was like in the even before I had my first international tournament. He said, if you want something done, find a busy person. Because they're used to working and doing a lot of stuff. And so we've got a lot of busy people, and that means that, we'll get some things done.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I don't think we had any new questions put into the question box. Did you see anything in the chat, Scott?
I think we know the answers to. Jason Rancho from BC asked, "Who is your favorite ODC member?"
That's a favorite child. God.
Both like the Red Sox, so maybe we won't ask that one. That seems like it could be a little bit. I saw somebody asked earlier, are Canadian championships a reality, or is this something that
for this year? Honestly, I think I'm pretty pumped, and I'm pretty confident that we're going to be able to host Canadian championships this summer. I really do.
Yeah. Just for the question about late applications to Canadians, that would probably be something that could be facilitated through your province if there was a need for fill-ins or something like that. So chat with your PUIC. There were a couple of people that wanted specifically, Jeff, to Ed Hardy, Keith Pender, really wanted me to say hi to you. And then there is one question that we haven't addressed, and if you don't mind. So a question, we all know that there are provinces where maybe the PSO and the umpire organizations tend to be on different pages. Could there be a working group organized by Softball Canada to help the two groups in each province work together and build together to become a stronger unit?
So at the start, one of the things people look to us as an oversight body. Really, the provinces are independent. That we don't really have any role to play in moderating those discussions between umpire organizations and PSOs. There are mechanisms within each province through sport branch or whatever it is. If there are if you have concerns or questions about PSOs, that's really your best thing. If we tried to, I don't want to just throw it away, but if we tried to wade in to moderate every dispute or disagreement or whatever, not being on the same page, we'd spend so much time doing that, and it's really not our role. It just isn't our role, and it's a tough one for people to understand sometimes. But we are not an oversight body. We are a conglomeration of a bunch of different PSOs, and we don't really have any authority to do any of that.
All right. There's a question.
As hard as it is.
Well, I appreciate you going through that and answering that, because given your introductory comments, and actually this was something Scott and I specifically chatted with you about, and so given your introductory comments, the fact that you've got another question just goes to show that the perceptions that people have. So it was really great to have you here to address that. Go ahead, Scott.
One more question about somebody's asking if Hockey Canada went to an app for their rulebook, whether we'd go that way. And now, if you can answer this without saying, if you have a big, large check to write for us because Hockey Canada has about 9 million more members than we do, then I'll be very impressed.
Yeah, so that's one of the challenges. I mean, we do have an app. Our rulebook is available for download. It's a, it's a paid download, a subscription model. So you can go and download it. I mean, it's not ready yet, the new rule book, but it will be. And the old rule book was available on the Softball Canada website. So it's there. So I know that a lot of organizations, are able to do a lot cooler stuff than we can. Baseball has some really interesting things going on. They, with digital training and those kinds of things. But they have a lot of Major League Baseball money pouring into Baseball Canada and Blue Jay money. Hockey Canada has Canada's money, right? It's like, it is the sport. And so we're, and it's not an excuse, it's just a reality. I mean, we have resources that I think we make pretty good use of. We get the best bang for our buck. We just have a lot fewer bucks than other organizations do to be able to develop and to support those kinds of programs and content, whether it be rule books in digital format or online training or whatever.
All right. So
Awesome.
as much as we like volunteers, if anybody wants to write us a big fat check, we will, as you can see from Jeff, we'll spend it responsibly. So make it payable to Jeff Whipple. Technologically savvy, so I'm sure he takes Bitcoin and everything. So send it. He'll figure it out. We'll do cool things with it. Now it's sounding like an infomercial. Like we're doing it.
There you go.
We're not. We're doing that. But.
Scott, thank you. Thank you so much for being such a great partner and co-host this evening. And Jeff, thank you so much for taking time to do this. You really have been on my wish list from day one. You escaped my tether last year, but thank you for doing this. And if I have my druthers, everyone out there, this will be recorded for longevity. You'll hear it. I would love to have the national director do this to kick off every single season. So look forward to spending time with Jeff again next year. And
can I answer the question that you asked that I didn't get a chance to answer?
You didn't answer one?
Who's your favorite ODC member?
Oh, you actually want to answer that?
So my 3-year-old granddaughter, she turns tomorrow or the next day, 28th, not next week. So she's 3. She loves the pups, the mighty pups.
Paw Patrol.
Paw Patrol. Paw Patrol is her life. She has all the pups. And anytime I say to her, "Who's your favorite pup?" she goes, "Oh, the pups." So all the ODC members are my favorite.
Aw.
I thought she was going to make us be the pups and you were going to be riders. She said, like, the pup, the rider's going to assemble the pups.
Yeah, then I'd like to know who's going to be who out of that group.
Yeah, we'll find you some names.
Yes, in all sincerity, thank you so much, Jeff, for taking the time to do this. Just fantastic feedback in the chat about the topics that you addressed, and so much appreciated. And just to plug everybody, the next webinar, February 21st, mark your calendar, 7 p.m. We will have Brent Chadwick, Genevieve Gadro, and Sandra Foran bringing you a rules overview evening. So feel free to attend. The webinar link will be available on the Softball Canada website about 2 weeks in advance. Thank you again, Jeff. And we will see everyone soon.
Yes.
Okay. Cheers.